stream where we come together as a community and talk about photography. And I hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing well, thanks. And as always, I like the audience to drive the conversation. So if you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat section right over here, and I'll do my best to answer them. For me this week, it's been a little slow in some respects, photographically speaking, because I had to crank out a couple of review videos on a tripod that is the Coleman tripod, which is on my site now. And then I'm working on another one for a Godox radio trigger. It's really nice. I don't know where I put it. It's somewhere around here. But also, a lot of the stuff that I ordered for Prime Day, a lot of photography related items came in. So I'll share a couple of things that I really like that came in that I got a good deal on. Like this one right here. I got the DJI dual mic pack with the charging case for 99 bucks. I mean, that's like 40% off. These are normally 170. So I'm going to look forward to start using these and maybe start doing some vlogging again for my channel. I'm going to try because I'm buying all this vlogging gear. I bought a Insta360 Go 3 and then Insta360 decided to send me, I think I showed you guys last week, um, this guy. And what's interesting is, I was complaining last week about, um, they're sending these out to photographers and not so much. I mean, I guess they did send them to content creators that do vlogging and things and sports action type stuff where they're skydiving and all of that. But they're sending this out to a lot of photographers, and it is with intention. They want us to look at this as an alternative to other compact cameras. So um, I'll have some interesting thoughts on this as I go along. I'm starting to get a feel for how to take pictures with this. I mean, it's super wide angle, which I'm used to, but it's the color science, the built-in, you know, profiles that they have that I'm getting a little bit used to now. At first, I didn't like the Leica Natural and the Leica Vivid, but in the right conditions, they actually are pretty nice color profiles. So it's just like any kind of art filter, creative stuff. You have to find the right scene to use that particular filter that you think would look good, and if you like it. And the few scenes that I tried, I wasn't crazy about, but it's kind of growing on me. And so I'm gonna that's what you're gonna see in the review for this. I put a little strap on. I'm gonna take it out to an event today over at Glen Echo Park, uh, which this should be ideal for capturing. Uh, they're having some kind of festival over there with lots of people, so this should be ideal for that kind of situation as well. Um, So so anyway, I got this mic thing and I got this tripod, this tabletop tripod came in. I got this I think for $28. These sell for 40, $50 all day long in various brands, right? This is the newer version. Uh and this thing is rock solid. I mean, so I put one of my heavier cameras on here just to try it out and it's pretty awesome. So this is going to be kind of a fun thing to take out into the field to do some macro photography and close-up photography, as well as some tabletop type photography. It, it's surprisingly really versatile too. You can extend the legs out. It has adjustments here, so you can get some pretty good height. I'm not crazy about these twist lock legs, especially the kind of like the paint pole where you twist and loosen, but for $28, I'm not going to complain. And it's really, really solid. I mean, this thing feels like it'll hold a much bigger camera than I have on here now. So there's this. And uh, those are the two things. There's a couple other things out in my studio. Oh, my cable tester. I gotta show you this. So I got this cable tester. So, I got just boatloads of these cables. And what kind of prompted me was I was having some problems with my Thunderbolt port and also updating firmware because it turns out some cables that you get with the like my Godox Flash, you can't update the firmware with the cable they included because it's not a data cable, which shocked me. It shocked me. And another thing that shocked me as I was testing out all my cables, I'll just demo real quick. You plug one end over there and one end over here. Oh no, this one goes over here. I'll turn it on. And it's got a little display. Let's see. There we go. So this one tells me that it's USB 3.2, 2.0, power delivery 3.0, and then I can click in and I can see all the pinouts and the values for those. And then I'm gonna have to check on this resistance test thing, what these different values mean, if they're good or bad. And then also, this is the most important or most user-friendly way to look at it, is that this will support up to 60 watts of power. It's USB 2 and USB 4 generation 2, so this will do 10 or 20 gigabits data transmission, then the vendor ID and something else. And then what was interesting is I bought what I thought were two identical cables. I just bought a red one and I bought a silver one. And if I recall, they were on the same page. You just pick the color that you want, but supposedly they were the same. And what I found out was is when I plugged this one in, gotta do it to the right direction. They're not the same. So far so good, right? Same power transmission, but this one has, if I recall, there's a pin missing here. And then when I go to the next thing, look at this. It's only USB 3.2 Gen 1. It doesn't have the USB 4. So this only goes up to 5 gigabits instead of 10 or 20. And these cables on the outside are identical. Like I said, I bought these. This is Amazon Basics stuff. These are. It's hard to see the labeling, but these are Amazon Basics. And they were supposed to be the same cable, just different colors, and they're not. And the problem I was having was sometimes my external SSDs and stuff would have very, very low throughput, or my card readers, would have low throughput, and I couldn't understand, because I thought I was using the fastest cable I had or compatible cable. It turns out they're not. They're not the same. So this helped me diagnose a lot of problems I was having with my card readers, my SSDs, my external hub, everything kind of related to getting the pictures off your camera onto the computer. And also, if you like to hook up your camera directly to the cables, you want to make sure that you're using a cable that is rated for the capacity, maximum capacity and backward compatibility. And then this is like one of the cables that came with, uh, I don't remember what device, very recently, something I was testing. So when I plug this one in, oops, this one goes this way. So it'll do USB-C and USB-A and then a variety of USB ports here. Uh, So no chip detected, which is expected, right? Um, Look at that. No data transmission, no power protocol. So it's just so the maximum power that you're going to get through this cable, if you do want to use it as just a power cable, is basically 500 milliamps. And you can see all the pins that are missing, right? A lot of them are not even present, which is true with USB-A and the no e-marker chip. So this cable, while it will charge whatever device this came with, I can't remember, it won't update firmware or do anything else. And like I said, one of my Godox cables that came with the flash, it's not a data cable. It would not update the firmware. Anyway, so yeah, I don't understand why any company would send out something that can be updated via firmware and send it with a cable that doesn't allow you to update the firmware. That can cause a lot of headaches for people that are not, kind of geeky nerdy about stuff, right? So this was $42. I think I have it on my deal page. If not, it's on Amazon. If you're interested, I can put a link to this for you if you want to get one of these. Because if you have like a drawer full of cable, I have multiple drawers full of cables that I'm going to start going through. Like I bought these. I bought a pack of 6 of these just for power, right? These are supposedly rated at 100 watts, and when I plug it in, it is this one at least is data capable, right? USB 2.0, so 500 megabits or whatever that is. And then a lot of pins missing, of course, because it was only designed for power delivery. No chip marker. So what is weird is this cable actually does deliver uh, up to 60 watts. I regularly get 25, 30 watts through this, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to test this on some more powerful devices and see what I actually get out of these because they were sold as 100-watt cables. I just bought them because they were short. I don't need 100 watts out of a little cable like this. But it charges my devices, pretty effectively. My cameras and things like that. But so this was a great little device. They have much more expensive ones, uh, but this one was very simple, relatively inexpensive, and it's telling me what I need to know. So there's that. And then bought a bunch of other stuff, but you know, a- about $500 worth in accessories and gear. I bought some light stands and some other tripods and um, just a lot of little things. Then I bought some clothes too, and some belts. Oh, like you wouldn't believe this. I got this belt. I got this belt for $1. Man, that was a steal. So I bought like three or four of them for $1 each, different colors and buckles and stuff. Uh, and some other stuff. Anyway, it's not photography related, but I was pretty happy with this belt. Um, so that's that. That's that. And then I'll show you some photos I took this week using this camera that I didn't show you last week. Uh, and we'll talk a little bit about more on the photography side of that before I do a full-on review, but just give you a little preview of my experience with it. So let me open up the chat window. I see a lot of people are here. It's good to see you guys. Darko, always good to see you. Um, you got your first usable image of a bald eagle in a river. Awesome. 25 miles north of where I lived yesterday. So that's not too far. That's cool. Uh, Also, a few cool wings out on the water of some geese and mallards. Went to the photo walk and meant, yeah, yeah. Photo walks are very relaxing, even if you don't take any keepers, right? You just go out and you just enjoy the moment. I went out yesterday to the park and there was a lot of pictures I didn't take because I didn't bring like my telephoto lens. I actually took my Canon out for the first time, I think, on a photo walk. Had that camera almost a year now, but I just have the 24 to 105 kit lens for it, so I didn't have any reach to speak of. But it gave me a chance to sit back and just kind of enjoy some of the natural scenes. Like I saw this beautiful great blue heron flying, just inches above the water across the lake. And it was sunrise and the sky was just explosive with color, lots of oranges and purples and reds and yellows. Just a gorgeous sky. And it was just such a beautiful scene. And there was something to just, you don't always have to take the picture. You can just enjoy being there to witness, a lot of beautiful things that we see when we go out. And then Dark says, "Did you see the new DX?" I did see that, the DX 16 to 52.8 and the 35 macro lenses. I did see a couple of thumbnails for it. I skimmed a little bit of I think it was Chris and Jordan. I didn't watch the video. I just kind of skimmed through it a little bit because I just want to see the size, of the lens. Because I don't have any Nikon Z cameras. Those look really nice though, those lenses. I don't know what the pricing was on them or anything. That's going to be key, right? But uh, I do remember they were using stepping motors, which for lenses like that, it's not a big deal. They're not sports action lenses. And, having a fast 2.8 in that range, so that would be a 24 to 75. So it's effectively, you know, uh, a standard zoom, right? With a pretty fast aperture. So that looks really exciting for people that shoot with APS-C Nikons. I think that's going to be a great lens for them, and it's a great range, for just everyday type stuff. And it looked relatively compact. So uh, depending on the price point, I don't know what is the price because Sigma makes one too, right? But I don't know if they make it for Nikon. Well, they do make it. They make a 17 to 50, very similar, 2.8. But, but the Nikon is 900 bucks. And they have a 17 to 28. Oh, sorry. I'm just eyeballing. And the new 35 1.7 macro. So the macro lens is sort of a normal field of view. That's kind of a nice lens as a replacement or substitute for carrying around a fifth, their standard 35, which I think is a lot more expensive. So it's nice that it has close-up capability. I assume it's one to one. You just have to get really close, to your subjects. But it's okay if you want one to one. But when you buy like a wide angle macro lens, and that's a relatively wide angle, then your composition is the intent is to include some of the environment, right? With the subject, you're not trying to just zoom in and just get the eyes and the mouth and like fill the frame with that. You're trying to capture whatever it is in the context of where it is. So more of an environmental type macro. So maybe like a mushroom where you don't have to get super close. You can kind of back up a little bit and then capture, some of the brush and leaves around it, or maybe some of the insects and things crawling on it. So, the 35 is that's a fun lens. I might pick one up because if I can get it for like 200 bucks, the Olympus 30 macro, I might do that. Just to get a little different perspective on my close-up shots. And Ernest here. Good to see you. What's new? How have you been? I'll talk a little bit about that. I've been doing well. And maybe you missed my question last time, but do you live alone or do you have a family? Oh, well, I live alone with Ellie. That's a curious question, but yeah. Um, and Anthony says, how many of you are there would be excited if OM System introduced an all-new O1 Mark III with an all-new higher resolution sensor, a new image processor at the end of February? That's not going to happen. I feel like the OM1 Mark II just came out, right? Was it this year or last year? But it feels relatively new. Just I would be shocked if the OM1 Mark III came out in February. That seems very unrealistic. Uh, but I guess the question is, uh, would I be excited if they did? Of course. Yeah, I would definitely be very excited if they came out with one. But it's tempered a lot by the fact that I seriously doubt it. I have to believe that it's going to happen before I can really get excited that if it did happen. I don't want them to rush a product to market. You know, it it's just what's a good example? There's products that I feel like just kind of get rushed. Like the original Nikon Z7 and Z6 was a little bit rushed in my opinion. And then when they came out with the Z2, that's the camera that should have came out a couple of years earlier, right? The Nikon Z2 and Z6 II. I feel like the original Z and Z6 were a little bit rushed. Uh, but yeah, I don't want them to rush. I want them to because when using this camera, like I've bought other Insta360 products that do basically the same things that this can. And, this takes it to another level. But for the most part, some of the features that I really like in this little bitty camera, I'd like to see ported over to our regular cameras. So if they do that, that's, I don't want to say game changer, but that would be a really nice add to a lot of the cameras that to the system that I think a lot of people will like and be able to use. And then how many megapixels would it take to get the majority of Micro Four Third excited with a new flagship? Would be 28 or 34? I don't know. I mean, I like I said, this is similar to when Panasonic released the G9 Mark II. Uh, I don't feel like people are excited about the 25 or 24, whatever it is, megapixels it had. So going to 28 wouldn't be enough. You would need to bump it up to a point that it makes sense, right? So, sense in terms of video, right? There's just no photography benefit by increasing megapixels on a Micro Four Thirds sensor. I just don't see any reason to, honestly. 20 is more than enough. 25 is fine if they can make it stacked, but that would probably drive the cost up even more. And then I don't think people are going to be excited about 25 megapixels versus 20 and want to pay that difference. So it's kind of a balance, right? And why do I say 20 is enough? Uh, because for the majority of users out there, and I know, Anthony, you're a very, very, very happy customer of your own One Mark II and your 150 to 600. You love your system. So I know where you're coming from. But, the biggest argument for going from 20 to 20 to a higher megapixel camera is being able to crop in more. And I've said this a million times. The camera is already cropped. It already has a very, very high pixel density. And cropping in, giving it more megapixels is only going to take away from the dynamic range and noise performance because each pixel is going to be smaller. So the well depth or whatever the technical terms are, you're going to have a smaller pixel, and the noise floor is going to be higher relative to the well depth of the pixel. So you're going to lose dynamic range and image quality and get an increase in noise, however subtle it is. And there's very little at this stage in the game that they haven't done already to try to reduce the noise floor, improve the noise performance. So what they really need to work on is the autofocusing performance. It's already really good, actually, but there's definitely some gaps, right? And I would say if they could take the 20 megapixels and really up their game on the autofocus, where there's no question it is top of the line, right? Because right now, you know, the I think I've seen hit rates like if you shoot with one camera system, the hit rate might be 95%, and then you go to OM systems and it's like 89%. It's still up there, but these little gaps, right? So if they could get it to where it was unquestionably the best autofocus in the in the camera market, that will go a lot further than just raising the megapixels. So me personally, for me, I'm not excited if they add megapixels. It just would make no sense to me at all. Uh, the argument for cropping is moot in my opinion because the camera's already cropped. Uh, but anyway, I would like to see improved autofocus, even though it's good enough, in my opinion. But when you hand it to, a lot of reviewers, they're gonna always say it's not as good as Sony, not as good as Canon, not as good as Nikon. You know what I mean? They always say that every single time. Even though I went out yesterday with my Canon R8, which has the same autofocusing system as their R6 Mark II and arguably the R5, right? And yet that thing did struggle with focus. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm using a kit lens, but I don't have these problems with my kit lens and Micro Four Thirds cameras that I was experiencing with this Canon. And granted, I don't use the camera much, but I had all my settings dialed in for autofocus. I was using expanded point. I was pointing at a squirrel. I think I already deleted the pictures, but it wouldn't focus on a squirrel, because it was relatively low light. But I know if I had my Olympus system, it would have got it, no problem. Um, because I've used my Olympus OM system cameras a lot, tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 images in wildlife. I have a pretty good feel of what it's capable of. And I was really disappointed with the autofocus performance on my Canon R8 yesterday. I was like, why won't it focus? And a lot of times it'll focus, I'll get false positives, and a lot of times it would focus, it would take the picture before it focused. And I have it set to focus priority because there's a setting in there. I have it set to focus priority, but it would take a picture before it acquired focus. My Olympus OM system cameras almost never does it take a picture unless it's sure it's acquired focus. Now, granted, I get false positives with my own system cameras too. I mean, every camera system gives you a false positive, but uh, I was like, I know without question I would have got that shot with my own system camera, no problem, with a 40 to 150 kit lens. And this Canon just it struggled. I don't know if I got one squirrel shot in focus. And it wasn't that far away. It was like not even 5 meters or 10 or 15 feet away from me. I'm like, how can you miss? It was like a couple of weeks ago or last month when I was like, I'm standing right here. I know it's probably on bird detect, but how did it misfocus? I'm standing right in front of it. How did the Fujifilm misfocus? If it doesn't see a bird, it should focus on the closest, biggest thing in the frame, and it misfocused. And I'm like, oh, how? Oh. Well, anyway, uh, I'm going to chalk it up to user error because I don't use either of those camera systems enough to dial in everything so that these things don't happen. But still, if I put the pointer like on the Canon, if I put the box right on the squirrel and I push the shutter button, it should not take a picture unless it has focus on it. When I have it in focus priority dialed all the way up, I just don't understand. But so in a lot of ways, the autofocus, in my opinion, is certainly the subject detect, like birds and animals, is better on OM systems than it is on my Canon R8, and certainly better than my Fuji at this point. Like I said, I'm going to take out these cameras more. So a lot of the images you'll see on my Flickr and Instagram are going to be from these other camera systems. Like today, I think I'll take the Canon out again to this event and try out the face detect and all of that. But my God, I was really frustrated yesterday with a few of the images, or with the focusing system. What is the way to shoot moonlight landscape, make it appear daytime and not create star trails? Is there an AI tool in Lightroom that removes star trails? I don't know. I don't think there is in Lightroom an AI tool to do that. But uh, I'll show you one that I did recently, and you can look at the settings I used and see if this will help you. Uh, Actually, that doesn't count either. What I did was, oh, it's not on my Flickr, really? Okay, so I think you can see this. Let me double check. Yeah. Uh, where's the full screen? So this image here, if we look at the EXIF, this is my OM3 with 75 to 300, 1/100th of a second, f7.1, ISO 200. Uh, but if I recall, this is an HDR shot, so I exposure blended this in post-processing. This is the only way to do it, is you have to do HDR, like exposure bracket, then blend them in post-processing yourself. I believe I used Nik Collection to blend these. But I have the moon exposed, I have the foreground exposed, and the sky relatively it's not clipping to white. So, and what time was it? This was 7 oh 6:13. So this was about 45 minutes before sunset. So 45 minutes before sunset, HDR exposure blend. This is the only way I know to do it. You're talking about doing it at night with stars. In that case, again, there's just no way to do it. You have to exposure blend. I don't think I have any examples. Yeah, I did a lot of macro stuff. So I don't have any examples for you to do landscapes with moonlight because if your landscape is only lit by moonlight, you're going to need at least a 1 minute exposure, right? If not 2 minutes. And to see the landscape lit by the moonlight, but then the moon is going to be way overexposed. It's just going to be a white dot, right? Clipped. So you have to use a tripod, do like a 2 minute exposure for the landscape, and then do a uh, whatever the exposure is, like 1/100th of a second for the moon at f8, and then blend those in post processing. That's the only way to do it. And without to avoid star trails, you want to use as fast a lens as you can. If you have like an f1.8 and as wide a lens as you can, f1.8 like 8 millimeters, the fisheye lens is perfect for this. Then you can do like a 15-second exposure, maybe 20-second exposure to get the stars, assuming you have a dark sky, right? Like a Bortle 5 or less, like Bortle 4, Bortle 3. The lower that Bortle number, the better. So you can do a 15 or 20-second exposure at 8 millimeters, and that will give you the stars without any star trails. And then do a separate exposure for the moon, then do a separate exposure for the landscape. And then you go into Lightroom and you bring those in, not Lightroom, Photoshop, and blend those manually. And Henning is here. Good to see you. Well, hey, Walter, how are you? Good to see you, Walter. And Jeff Painter and Laya, good to see you. Good afternoon. Um, Roger, good to see you. And Birds for Life. How sharp is the 300 f4 with the MC14? It's very sharp. It's excellent. My straight out of camera images are really, really good. But bear in mind, a lot of bird shots, you have to be like 1/2000th, 1/4000th of a second. So your ISO is going to be up there. And that sort of mitigates a lot of the sharpness the lens can deliver. It's always going to be sharper than anything else out there, in my opinion, save for maybe the 150 to 400. That's going to be at 300 millimeters. So it's going to be sharper than the 150 to 600. It's going to be sharper than the 100 to 400. It should be equally sharp, as many people have told me. It should be equally sharp as the 150 to 400. But what you can do is, I will give you a link. I have 300 photos in here. A lot of them suck, but what it is my photo album for the 300 millimeter f4. But a lot of the pictures have the teleconverter. So if we go to that page, uh, let's see. Like this one is the 300 f4 all by itself. This is the 300 f4 with the teleconverter. And you can kind of, these are all post-processed, but with DxO. But you're not going to want for sharpness. This is the 300 f4 without the teleconverter, without. This is with the this is with the 2x teleconverter. Now, what's going to help you determine is you want to click on this and you can see the original size here. So this is heavily cropped. This is a 1247 by 935. So this is barely 1 megapixel, this image here. That's how tight I had to crop in on that with the 2x teleconverter. This is without a teleconverter. Without. But yeah, just check the EXIF data down here, and they'll give you shutter speed and ISO and everything. All the EXIF data should be there. But I don't have a side-by-side examples of with and without the teleconverter. Here's with the teleconverter. Very, very sharp. So short answer is I wouldn't. You got nothing to worry about. If you use the 1.4, your image is going to be tack sharp. And let's see. Gord, good to see you. Going out for a dog walk. Awesome. And Darko, let me, wow, my chat jumped all the way up again. So Birds for Life, hopefully that helps. You can actually see my pictures that I took using it with and without. You know, they're not side by side shots, but trust me, I can't really tell any difference with or without the teleconverter. And Gord, good to see you. And it's Henning says, always nice to order a lot of stuff all at the same time. Then packages arrive in bit like Christmas. You don't know what's in it. Yeah. That mine are all spaced out. I had them sent like super slow delivery so I can get that extra 1 or 2% cash back or whatever. I got stuff coming in today actually, supposedly. We'll see. And do you recommend any resources for beginner using Lightroom? I do not have any. Sorry. I'm not really a heavy Lightroom user. I use mostly DxO Photolab, so I don't look for tutorials on on Lightroom. And Ken, good to see you from Northern Ireland. Marco, good to see you. Happy Sunday. And Thomas, good to see you, Thomas, from Atlanta, Georgia. And Gordon is here from the West Coast in Canada. It's 50 degrees there. Wow. Today we're going to have a nice day here. It's going to be in the 70s. And you cannot skimp on cables. Uh, true. But I get so many cables that come in with my devices. The cables that I buy, I try to make sure I buy the right one. But um, the cables that I get with a bunch of stuff, God, I don't know what they're giving me. And Calvin, good to see you from Maine and New England. Let's see, this side towards screen from New England. Good morning. And I wonder if the DX lenses are Tamron rebrands. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure that the one of their zoom lenses are the 28 to 70 2.8. I can't remember the exact focal range, but a lot of people have said that is definitely a Tamron rebrand. And the German word for 35 millimeter before adopting the full frame marketing speak small image format. Okay. Um, yeah, yeah, 35 millimeter was small relative, in the film world. The 35 millimeter film was the smallest that a lot of people are using. Like everybody's doing 5 by 4 or larger, 8 by 10s, etc. And Henning says there is credible evidence that Tamron has acted as an OEM vendor for Nikon. Nikon has not officially published full list naming which Nikkor models are built by Tamron. Yeah, of course they're not going to do that. And it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, some of them are so blatant, like the Sigma 150 to 600 is rebranded to OM Systems. And I'm not saying there's zero engineering and re-engineering of the lens when they change brand names or labels. But it's, a lot of the heavy lifting's already been done, right? With the lens, in the lens design and manufacturing, the heavy lifting is done. They just have to re-engineer a little bit to make it work optimally with the OM system cameras. And when I'm talking about the Sigma 150 to 600. And the problem is that a firmware upgrade doesn't have the same effect on OM systems bottom line. True. And Walter says, following question, has the firmware reached its limits with the current hardware? I seriously doubt it. You know, I'm not sure what you mean by limits. Like, is there a limit to the features that they can add to the camera, like computational type features, or is there a limit to what they can do with the raw processing or the image quality itself directly? Is there a limit? Is there a limit they can do with autofocus? I don't think they've hit the limits on any of that, whether it's image quality or uh, autofocusing or computational features. There's, I think there's just a lack of will to do it because, as person Paul says, it doesn't have much effect on the bottom line. It basically, in the short term, it doesn't have much effect, right? It kind of pulls resources away from developing new cameras by working on firmware. Fuji is the king of missing focus. I'm sure there's some Fuji people that will disagree with you. And I got a shot of an albino squirrel. Oh, wow, that's really cool. I don't think I've ever seen one in my real life. And Robin Wong is in the house. What's up? Going to edit a batch of photos while listening to your stream. That is awesome. You had me thinking about. I was thinking about you this morning, actually. Uh, if you're gonna make that video on the Chuzhou uh toy camera, I was waiting for you to make that. Maybe you released it and I missed it, and I haven't caught up on your last stream yet. Um, but Robin Walnut's awesome. He's always been a great supporter of my channel, and vice versa. I love Robin Wong's channel. If you're not familiar with him, you should definitely check out his work over there. He has a lot of great videos out there to help you with your photography. And he's a big Micro Four Thirds fan, like myself. Okay. And Linotemis is here. Linotemis. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, but I'm sorry if I messed that up. Linotemis. I'm gonna go with that. And Greg has a question. Looks like, what travel zoom do you like for the OM3 that's still sufficient for low light indoors, or should I stick with primes? Yeah, you have to stick with primes. I my favorite zoom lens is the 12 to 45 f4. It was the 12 to 40 f2.8, but it feels a little bulky for me on an OM3. The 12 to 45 is the perfect match. Now, if you need low light, yeah, you're gonna have to go with primes. 25 1.8, 45 1.8, 17 1.8. Go with those three and you'll be happy camper. Um, you know, Panasonic has some nice ones too, right? The 15 1.7, the 25 1.7. They have a 42.5 1.7, and a 25 1.4. Those are all very interesting lenses, but I think to get the best performance from your OM3, you want to stick to the OEM lenses, the 17-25 and 45 1.8s. Those are all excellent, excellent primes. I would I would avoid, if you want to talk about a travel zoom, you're talking about low light indoors, but I would avoid the 14 to 150, the 12 to 200. These are outdoor type lenses because the aperture is so small. Most of the RG computational features can only be used independently. Be good if some could be combined. Yes, that would be nice. Like I would like to combine and live ND with high res shot mode, right? Uh, for high res shot mode with focus stacking, things like that. That would be kind of cool. Okay, I lost my place again. I don't know why my chat window jumps up. Oh, yeah, you and I have the same thought, right? high res and live ND together. And I feel like the chat has. Okay, and Eric, hey Eric. So my Ricoh GR3X and even my Q3 miss focus often. There's a few workarounds. I do miss the OM1 for focus. So it's not just me, right? Uh, Other camera systems, they're not, not that the GR3 and the Q3 are known for autofocus, but for the cost of those systems, you would think it would be at least, you know, fairly reliable, shot to shot to shot. And to be fair, the Canon is pretty reliable. When the light's better, it is pretty reliable. And my 24 to 105 is a slow lens. Maybe it'll be better if I put the 51.8. Those are the only two lenses I have for it, is the kit lens and one prime. Uh, but anyway, oh, I think I'm caught up. Let me just double check. Okay, so let's look at a few pictures. You guys can ask a few more questions. I'll give you my answer or opinion depending on the question. Uh, Let me drag this over so I can see. And then actually it's probably over here. All right, so we'll start with this one. This is a straight out of camera JPEG from the Ace Pro 2. And this was originally a 50 megapixel image, but I cropped it down to a 16 by 9, so it's less. And then I resized it again to just 1500 megapixels. Uh, I'm sorry, to to a four. This is a 4 megapixel image now. It was originally closer to 50, but other than the crop and resizing, this is straight out of camera, and it just did an amazing job. Now, if you compare that with, okay, compare, this is the straight out of camera. This is my edit of the same picture. Because it shoots raw. This little Ace Pro 2 does shoot raw images. So I was able to really manipulate the sky and bring out details. I may have overdone it. It almost looks like an HDR now. But that's pretty amazing. The straight out of camera, and it does HDR in real time. It doesn't have to like take three pictures and blend them together to create an HDR. It does the HDR in real time. So we captured all of the color in the sky. We captured all of the shadows, in the foreground. We barely clipped any highlights, if any. And the colors are well saturated and nothing looks muddy. There's no like motion blur, from the grass in the foreground moving. I mean, it did an HDR shot in a single image. It just the post process, of course, but uh I was pretty impressed. And some people might even prefer the straight out of camera image versus my, sort of over processed HDR shot. It's a single raw image, but I thought that was kind of interesting. And then this is just I was just trying to see. I saw somebody try to use the Ace Pro 2 for real estate photography. That guy is out of his mind. I didn't watch the video, but I said, "Oh, maybe there's some potential there." So I took a picture, and I said, "No way! This looks like crap." Uh, and this is very very typical of the some of the shots that I have to do where you have a lot of mixed lighting, right? We have very strong tungsten, yellow light on the left side, then we have natural daylight coming in on the right. And I didn't turn on any of these lights up here, but those are most assuredly are also tungsten or kind of yellow, right? Warm colors. There's just no way. I don't care how much HDR you do. This was I don't know, a water thing for a fake train. This didn't come out too well. This picture sucks too. This is also from the Ace Pro 2. Um, I didn't. I was just trying to do a low to the ground and get the color of the leaves in, but I don't know. This is crap. This image I post process. I added a little bit of soft focus to it because it was just a little bit too busy, and then I applied some saturation so you could see the colors of the trees, the fall leaves coming. But overall, kind of a nice image, I thought. Very basic composition, rule of thirds, horizons, in the center. Uh, that's about it. And this one I took with my Canon R8, and I this was out of a sequence of 5 or 6 images, I believe, and this was the only one in focus on the eye. And I had bird detect on, and I had the square right on this goose, and it just this was the only one that came in focus. Uh, this was a nice shot, I thought. A little bit different than your typical Canadian goose. Like he's looking out at the beautiful scene just like I am, right? We're both enjoying the sunset. So I'm enjoying him, enjoying the sunset, so to speak. But I thought this was kind of a nice image. That's the one I showed you before. This was my processed image. This is another image that I processed. Uh, this one looks better than the straight out of camera, in my opinion. I don't have the straight out of camera one, but this one I cropped to a little bit wider. I think this is a 16 by 7. And I took this yesterday morning and I processed a raw image, but it came out pretty good, I think. It's a little bit too purple. There was a lot of, the sky was just making everything purple. So I'm not happy with the colors actually, but I wasn't able to really correct them too well. And I think I showed these last week because I took these last week, just some architectural images uh, with the Insta360. These are okay. I like this one. This is a square crop. These are all processed. These are not the straight out of camera. Oh my God, this is my the fraternity that I went to in college. I can't believe this house is still standing. I should have took a wider shot. But if you look over here, this building is brand new. That was not there when I went to college. And there's another one just like it on the other side. So you have this really old house surrounded by these modern glass steel brick buildings. It was just kind of an interesting juxtaposition at this point, and I should have took a wider shot. But I just wanted to get a nice shot of where I used to go to school, and brings back some memories, man. I remember on this balcony, and the students would walk. There's a sidewalk down here, but the students will walk down here, right? And we would sit up here, and as the girls would walk by, we would we would hold up a sign with a number on it and give them a rating like this as they were walking by. Oh my God, that was a lot of fun. And then the other thing we used to do is there was a guy with a fishing pole, and he put like a dollar bill on the end of the line, and he put it down there on the sidewalk. He'd cast it out onto the sidewalk, so it'd be sitting there. and as people would walk by and try to pick it up, he'd yank it. Oh, yeah, that was some good times. And there was a guy, he got really drunk one night at a party. And back when I went to school, the drinking age was 18, was the legal age. So we had some parties, let me tell you. But anyhow, he ran out. There's some stairs behind his door. He ran down these stairs, came out this front door, and jumped off of this and landed down here. Somehow he survived. I have no idea, but he was okay. Oh, but yeah, there was some good times there. And yeah, these I showed all last week. Okay. So that's all I have photographically from this week. Where's my chat window? I'm so lost. Okay, a few other things came in. Uh, I'm thinking of getting an EM10 Mark II. Okay. It's a nice little camera. I mean, get one in good shape because it's like 10 years old now, right? So you want to find one that's low shutter count and in good condition. Because if it's been used heavily since its release, it's going to be beat up like mine and it's not going to survive. It's not, it's a very durable, rugged camera, but it's not, invincible, right? So if you can find one in good condition, you'll probably pay $300-400. But it's a great camera, and I got tons of tutorials on it here on my channel for it. Is that sky? No, no sky replacement. That was straight out of camera. Uh, I'll pull up. I have to use Lightroom for the Ace Pro 2 because DxO doesn't support it. I did I did export a few of the images as TIFF files, so I could edit them in DxO. Uh, but a lot of them I use Lightroom. But here's the straight out of camera. Where's the JPEGs? These are the straight out of camera JPEGs. You know, some of these are clipped. Oh, that's because I dialed in +2 EV, 1 EV. So I was trying to bracket. I was experimenting a bit. Uh, but yeah, this is all the images I took, and this is where we went to breakfast. Gosh, I'm getting hungry now. But early in the morning, I guess this is one of the earliest shots. This is +1 EV on the exposure comp. This is one of the images that I cropped to 16 by 9, right? So uh, if I just do a 16 by 7, really no editing, but you can see all this purple everywhere. That's driving me nuts. And then I could just do an auto and just adjust it slightly. And I'm adjusting the JPEG here. And then maybe come over here and just do a linear gradient over here. Desaturate a little bit. Maybe do the same thing over here and just desaturate or warm it up with a little less purple. Maybe pull back some of the purple over here. That would be the image. And if we compare that, so there's the original. This is my edited image. I don't have to do much, right? Okay. Um, your university knocked down. That's what I was expecting because I didn't recognize anything over there, anywhere around the university, I barely recognized it. I didn't realize I was in College Park until I looked over to the right and I saw columns because they got the big Roman columns on a lot of the buildings on the campus itself. But if I look straight behind or to my left, my God, it was like totally new, all brand new glass and steel buildings everywhere. That place has been totally revitalized. Uh, and then I went down some of the bars that I used to go to. They're all like shops now and stores. One of and a couple of the bars that I used to go to, they were serious dive bars. They're now like family restaurants. People are bringing their babies in with them, their families. I'm like, my God, I remember that corner of the bar. That, yeah, there was a lot of bad things happened in that bar. Well, let me rephrase that. A lot of college things happened inside that bar that I see people bringing their families into now, and it's just shocking to me because some of the buildings are still there, but they don't look anything like they did when I went to school. And Linda says, I hear the display cable is a weak spot. M10 is about 250 euros here. The M53 is 550. Okay, so Linda, what I would recommend is if you can find a sweet spot, the EM5 Mark II is should be priced right in between those. If you can stretch a little bit for an EM5 Mark II, I would go for that because it has everything the EM10 does and more. They added high-res shot mode, uh, for one, much better build quality, much more robust, and it's weather sealed. I wouldn't test that, okay, at this point because it's kind of an old camera. I wouldn't test the weather sealing, but you can feel a little bit more reassured that it's weather sealed. Better EVF, it's larger and fully articulating screen. Some people prefer the Tilty on the EM10, but also has for video mic jack built in, uh, and you don't have to worry about the display cable, right? Now, I've not had any problems with mine at all, but I've heard some people saying one of the switches kind of lose their integrity, but I think the vast majority of people that have the EM5 Mark II are not having any issues with their camera after all this time. It's still working perfectly, as is mine. So I would go between those two and think about it. Uh, think about stretching a little bit for an EM5 Mark II if you can. And that kind of stuff will get you canceled today. Yeah. Oh man, good old days. Good morning, the great Vanzini. Good to see you. So my display, and let me just add, my display cable. This is the order of things that failed on that camera. And keep in mind, I abused my EM10 Mark II. I dropped it so many times. But the first thing to go is the eye sensor, uh, so that when you take your camera away from the your eye, the LCD should come on, but it didn't because the eye sensor went. So I had to manually switch back and forth. Both of them still worked, but I just couldn't do it automatically. Uh, and then I did have a little bit of a problem with the data cable where I had to pull the screen out a little bit before it would come on the LCD. So if I had it fully in the camera, it just would not come on. So I'd pull it out a little bit and it would come on. Those were the two things. And then later on, I broke the battery door. Uh, and then finally, the sensor or some circuits inside finally failed, where I just could not get I got all these streaks and lines and everything all over the picture. Like it just would not take a picture or do video anymore. That was the last thing to go was the sensor, but I used it for live streaming for years. It was sitting right here. Uh, it was my live streaming camera for years. But yeah, earlier this year, it finally gave out on me. And now I'm using an Insta360 product. I forget what it's called, but it's one of their webcams. So, like I said, if you can buy one in good condition with a low shutter count, like under 40,000, if you can, but if you can get one with 10,000 or less, even better. I keep getting texts. I better check to make sure. Yeah, I gotta confirm that. I need to get going. I'm going to this event today. I think David Flowers had a display problem too. Oh, I'm not familiar with David Flowers. And Manuel, good to see you. EM5 sounds better, especially better EVF, also better IBIS. Uh, but I also really prefer the tilt screen. I think about it though. Thanks for your advice. Sure, sure. Um, Let me tell you something that you can do with a flippy screen, photography wise, that you can't really do with a tilt screen. Let me grab a flippy screen camera, like like my OM3. Is you can hold the camera like this when you're doing sort of vertical type images. You can flip the screen down and see what you're taking a picture of. So this is really useful for doing low angle shots. Like a lot of times, like flowers are a good example. Flowers are mostly vertical shots, right? Because you have the stem with the leaves and a couple of flowers on top. So a lot of times you do verticals, right? Like this, and they're down low to the ground. So when you're bringing the camera down, you can see your composition much easier with this by flipping it around. So I tend to like the fully articulating screen because I hardly do video, right? Uh, I tend to like it just because I can do this and do vertical photography and compose my image, especially when it's low to the ground. It's also useful in a lot of ways that a tilty screen isn't. Uh, but primarily that this is what comes to mind primarily. I'm trying to think. There were other situations where I'm like, yeah, flipping a tilt screen would be an issue, whereas this one's not. But obviously, the biggest advantage is being able to face forward. But this definitely has a place too, where I can hold the camera down low to the ground and still compose my shots. Right. So if that doesn't, just to give you that it's not a total loss by going to a fully articulating screen versus a tilt screen. And good morning, Adam. Good to see you. He's a YouTuber and also sings praises of the EM10 too, now the M1 Mark II. Yes. Now, if you can swing an EM1 Mark II, that would be great. But I know you were talking like 250 to 550, 550 being kind of probably your maximum that you want to spend. I think the EM5 Mark II, you should be able to get for 300, 350 euros. Uh, and that's a much better camera than the EM10. And Gray Vanzina says, one of my pen-ups lost the ability to switch, but I'm strictly an EVF shooter, so no big deal. Yeah, so the eye sensor went bad on yours too, huh? Mine is still working like a champ. Henry says, on an EM1 Mark II, where can I set the highlight shadow limits? Okay, I don't have an EM1 Mark II anymore, but you would do that. Uh, I'm sure my EM5 is going to be similar. Where is it? It should be on the shelf here. M5 Mark III. Ah, what's that? Nope. Ah, here we go. It should be very similar to my EM5 Mark III. Okay. So I think it's page one, picture mode, and highlight shadows. Okay. You don't do it there. I know you can assign a button to it, but I'm trying to see where it is in the menu. Give me a second. It's been a while since I've messed with that. All right, so I'll just show you the quick way. I wonder if I can hook this up. So first go into the button menu, menu B, and then select the first one. Whoops. Dang. All right, select the first one. I got to be able to connect this. Hold on. I should have one of my cables here. About this one. That's it. All right. Let's see. Almost. Almost have to reverse it. No. Let's see. Transform. Oh, why is this upside down? It's not that. There we go. All right, so go into the menu. Okay, so it's menu B, right? Button function, the plus or minus multifunction. So assign this to multifunction. Okay, and then uh, so I assigned it to the exposure comp button. So now when I push this, oh, I have to hook this back up. So now when I push the multifunction button, I can get to the highlights and shadows. And then if you hit the info button, you can assign the midtones like that. So button function, it should be the same on the EM5 Mark II, or I'm sorry, on the EM1 Mark II. Assign this to multifunction like that, and that should do it. Okay. Hopefully that made sense. I thought there was a way to access it directly in the menu. I can't remember. Yeah, it's not there. And it's not in here either. Actually, if you look at the super control panel, I don't know if the EM5, EM1 Mark II has this, but it should. Is when you go in the super control panel, it's also right here. So if I go into the menu, what happened if I unassign this button? So if I go back, yeah, so you might have it here in the super control panel as well, right there. So check those two places. Hopefully, Henry, that makes sense. I don't have an EM1 Mark II to show you directly, but that's the closest thing I have. Eric says, I'd like to get a mint Olympus EM5 Mark I silver with 45, not even to use, but to put in a case. Oh, really? That's what started. Yeah, you and Jimmy Chang have a very similar story. Jimmy Chang said the M5 Mark I was the camera that kind of got him into it. And yes, definitely under 40,000. Definitely. Okay. And Jeff is here. Good to see you. It says, no, the M1 Mark II is too heavy. I did consider the Mark I, which is actually cheaper than the M10 here, but still about 500 grams. Okay, so size and weight's a priority. Um, yep, EM5 Mark II sounds like the right answer. It's very, very compact. And you'll feel a big difference in the if you have a chance to put them side by side, you'll see a big difference in the build quality. Even back in the day, I remember the marketing material. Uh, they said that the metal that they used on the EM5 Mark II was superior to, say, the one on the EM10 Mark II, and you can feel it. Uh, Maxi says, looking for a lens on eBay from authorized dealer, and description says there is a slight dust in the lens, but it doesn't impact image quality. Is this true? Especially the 150 to 400. I would say that's true. Uh, the only place that really affects image quality the most is the rear lens element. If there's any scratches or dust on it, that could be an issue. If the dust is on the rear element, if it's kind of anywhere else in the lens, typically like between the front and the rear, uh, if it's just minor dust, I wouldn't worry about it. I've never seen any issues. Because think about it, like I'll give you an example. This is a terrible example, but yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. It would have to be the dust. If the dust is on the rear element, yeah, that's a problem. So look, if they should have good pictures of the rear element, look very carefully there. If there's any minor scratch or any dust that you can see there, that I would kind of avoid. But if you see dust inside the front element, like when they look down the barrel, I wouldn't worry about that at all. Adam says, I don't recall. Do you have any Fuji bodies or experience trading in one of my OM cameras for an XT30 and kit lens? Figure out how much can I lean on you for this? Oh, yeah, I have an XH2 and I used to have an XT30. So I don't have any videos on any of their menus or anything because I don't really use the cameras that much. But uh, I'm not totally unfamiliar with it. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And John says the M10 Mark IV developed a sticky shutter, even locked up the camera. It's on the way to OMDS for repair. Okay. I skipped everything after the EM10 Mark II because the Mark III, the Mark IV just didn't add anything for me, right? They added 4K video and 20 megapixels, but those are two things, as I've said many times, I'm not a big megapixel whore unless it comes to my full frame cameras. Then I want 60, right? I got an A7R5, or I want the S1R Mark II, you know? I don't know why. I don't know why I'm like that. It's different with full frame. Uh, Partially it's out of curiosity. Am I really going to see a difference? Because like right now, I could get like an S5 Mark II pretty cheap, right? And it'll do everything basically the S1R Mark II will do. But I'm like, why would I buy an S5 when I can do an S1R Mark II? I'm messed up in the head. One day though, I'm gonna get back in the L mount system one day. I just probably have to wait till next year unless something happens between now and Christmas. I get lots of Christmas money. And for clarity, I'm trying to set the zebra or blinkies. Yeah, don't worry about that at all. A little bit of dust in the lens, that's not going to affect that feature. Hacker Dude is here. So on the 7 Artisans 4 millimeter, have you found the best default focus aperture setting for sharpness from say 5 feet? I find I have to ring set to past infinity for this range. Uh yeah, it's so wide that I typically put it at f5.6 f8 most of the time if I'm just shooting like 360 type stuff. But if I'm doing astro, I set it to f2.8, because you don't need critical sharpness when you're doing astro, like star trails and stuff with that lens, like I did. But for everything else, I usually, if I recall, I had it set to f between f5.6 and f8 because it's a smooth ring. It doesn't have clicks of I don't think, and that was good enough for a fisheye lens. Yeah, and this is a full circular fisheye, right? I love my M5 Mark II, but now the shutter closed unwantonly. Oh, I haven't heard of that one. And then, in the same vein, some vendors say there's a bit of dampness in the lens, but it doesn't affect the image quality. I haven't heard of that. The shutter in the M5 Mark II is does feel a little dampened anyway, in my opinion. The only thing with the M5 Mark II, okay, there's two areas that the M5 Mark II is not quite as good as the M10 Mark II. And these should not be deal breakers. But the first one is the shutter shock. If you're shooting at less than say 1/250th of a second, you're like a 1/60th or 1/100th. You know, when you get up to about 1/300th and higher, 1/250th or higher, it's not as big a problem. But there's shutter shock on that camera. I noticed this when I was shooting telephoto lenses, like the 14 to 150 kit lens, and I'm at 150 millimeters. You have to use silent shutter because you'll get motion blur from the shutter closing and opening. Uh, but don't buy anything. If the vendor hints at any problems with the camera, like dampness, whatever that means, I would avoid that camera. You want to get a camera that says mint, excellent, whatever. You want to buy one in really good condition when they're that old, definitely. but the shutter does feel soft. I guess maybe because the IBIS system is, you know, I don't know. It doesn't have that clack, right? It just you hear it open and close and it feels soft and dampened, but that doesn't affect image quality. Unlike a lot of cameras that don't have IBIS in them, there's a clack to the shutter, right? Like my R8, that thing has a really clackety shutter in it because there's no IBIS. The digital age has flaws over the good old mechanical cameras. I'll outlive you, and that has a 10. Yeah, yeah. If you can find parts, right, and people are still able to repair them. Uh, okay, so I said there was two things. So it was the shutter shock, and then the second thing the EM10 Mark II is better at is the buffer. So if you're doing continuous shooting, like at 7 or 8 frames per second, whatever the max is, the buffer will fill up like almost instantly on an EM5 Mark II. Like you'll get 1 second of buffer. I think the EM10 Mark II will go a little bit longer, right? Uh, like 4 seconds. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I do remember the buffer in the EM5 Mark II is pretty sad. Like right after you finished 8 frames, it was done, and it start to slow down. Okay. And after the M10 Mark II, they started removing customizations and button assignments. It seemed like it was their start at further focusing on their camera lines. Yeah, they took away they put a few things back in through firmware, like the flash remote control, flash RC, uh, and maybe one or two other things. But they did simplify the cameras from the M from the Mark III and the Mark IV were a little bit simplified. Less customization, definitely. I agree about the M10 3 and 4. No my sets, yeah, and the my sets. I use those a lot in the M10 Mark II, definitely. And the M5 II is built like a beast, but only 16 megapixels. No big deal. Yes, no big deal. Robin says use the anti-shock 0 second to mitigate the shutter shock. Fun fact: I was partially responsible to push Olympus Japan to come up with the solution with the shutter shock. So that's interesting. I tried that too. Zero anti-shock on the M5 Mark II, and I was still getting shutter shock. It may have been mitigated, like you say, mitigated a little bit. Uh, I didn't measure at what shutter speed it started to mitigate. I just remember when I was testing some lenses at the long end, I was like, why are the M5 Mark II images not sharp, right? And I do, but I don't know. Maybe I didn't try the anti-shock. I'll have to try. I know that's why they added anti-shock into the EM5 Mark II. I do recall that. I probably saw it on one of your streams, that they added anti-shock feature to the EM5 Mark II specifically to address this shutter shock. Um, but I don't recall if that fixed it or not. I'll have to try it. For some reason in my mind, I'm thinking that didn't work, but I'd have to try it. We'll see. I don't know if you still have an EM5 Mark II because you could try it, right? But I can try it. I still have mine. I'll put my 40 to 150 on, zoom out to 150, and do a few shots on a tripod securely locked down and see if the anti-shock worked or not. Because in theory, it should work, right? Because now we're only dealing with the closing the shutter, and that's after the exposure is done. So it shouldn't show up in the image, right? Because anti-shock, basically what it does is it does an electronic curtain first. So the shutter's open when it starts to take the picture. And then when it's done, it closes the shutter. So in theory, there should be zero shutter shock in that image because you didn't have the shutter moving when it was taking the picture. Uh, So in theory, it makes a lot of sense. In practice, I have to test it. I'll have to see. And shutter shock was an issue on my GX8. Always used electronic shutter. Yeah, but okay. I have to call it here, guys, because I'm going to an event, and I have to prep a little bit before I go. So I'll post some pictures on my Instagram and Flickr, tomorrow or the next day, from that event. Most of them are going to be done using this little Insta360 thing, and I haven't decided what other camera I'm going to take. I want to take a real camera. I'm charging up my TG5, but I'm thinking maybe I'll take my Deluxe 8. I don't know. First world problems, right? But I appreciate everyone being here today. I really do appreciate you joining me today. Uh, it's always good to see everyone, very familiar faces or names, I should say. You guys have been a great support to my channel all these years, and I really appreciate it. So I'll be back on Tuesday. We'll talk about some deals in buying gear. I'll share with you some new deals, and I'll try to put together everything I bought last week and tell you what I thought of it. Because there is one item I'm not too happy with that I might return. But other than that, you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Eat healthy, exercise, and I hope to see you again soon.